The massive trading station hung in space like a glittering spider web, its metal arms stretching out to welcome ships from across the galaxy. At docking port 17, the human cargo vessel Prudence was going through its standard pre-docking checklist for the fourth time. "Look at them," sneered a blue-skinned dock worker to his companion. "The humans are checking their airlocks again," as if the first 3 times weren't enough. Captain James Miller heard the mockery through the still-open communication channel, but continued his work without pause. After 15 years in space, he had grown used to the jokes, the eye rolls, and the constant ribbing from other species about humanity's cowardly nature. Docking port 17. "This is Prudence requesting final confirmation of safety protocols." Miller spoke clearly into the comm. He could hear barely muffled laughter in response. "Prudence, you have triple-checked everything already. Just dock your ship, you scared little humans." The dock controller's voice dripped with amusement. Miller shared a knowing look with his first officer, Robert Hayes. They had been through this routine hundreds of times. "Regardless, we require final confirmation, as per Human Space Safety Regulation 284B. The entire bridge crew waited patiently as the dock controller made exaggerated sighing noises. This was standard procedure for them. One last check could mean the difference between life and death in the cold vacuum of space. Engineer Maria Torres spoke up from her station. "Captain, backup power systems are at full capacity. All 3 of them." She added the last part with a small smile, knowing it would draw more alien ridicule. 3 backup systems, came the expected response from the dock. "By the eternal stars, what are you humans so afraid of?" "Everything," David Walsh, the ship's safety officer, muttered under his breath as he reviewed his displays. "That's why we're still alive." The Prudence finally completed its docking procedure, a full 15 minutes after any other species would have finished. As the crew prepared to disembark for their scheduled cargo transfer, they underwent their standard suit checks. Each crew member helped inspect another's suit, checking seals, oxygen levels, and emergency systems. A group of tall, warrior-like aliens passed by, their ceremonial armor clanking. They stopped to watch the humans with obvious disdain. "Look at these humans, scared of their own shadows," one warrior laughed. They checked their suits as if the station's atmosphere could fail at any moment. Miller continued his inspection of Hayes' suit, seal integrity at 100%, oxygen reserves full, emergency beacon operational. He worked through his checklist methodically, ignoring the growing audience of amused aliens. "I heard," one of the dock workers said loudly, "that humans won't even take a shuttle ride without running 6 different emergency drills first." 7, actually, Walsh corrected without looking up. The 7th one covers multiple system failures during solar flare conditions. His deadpan delivery drew more laughter from the gathered aliens. As the crew finally stepped onto the station, they moved in their characteristic careful manner, always within reach of handholds, always aware of emergency exits. The other species in the crowded corridor parted to let them through, some making exaggerated, careful stepping motions in mockery. "Did you know," a merchant called out, "that human ships carry enough backup food to last 3 standard years? What do they think will happen? They'd probably fear their ship will fall into a time loop." Another alien answered, drawing more laughter. Miller led his crew through the station with quiet dignity. They had cargo to transfer, supplies to load, and safety procedures to follow. Let the others laugh. Every human knew the truth. Space was dangerous, unforgiving, and perfectly capable of killing you in 1,000 different ways. At their destination, the cargo master, a bulky alien with metallic scales, was waiting impatiently. "Finally, I was beginning to think you humans would spend the whole cycle just checking your equipment." "Better to spend time checking," Miller replied calmly, "than to spend eternity floating in space." He pulled out his cargo manifest tablet and began his careful verification process. The cargo master groaned. "Not the triple inventory check. You humans are the most cowardly species in the galaxy." Miller simply nodded and continued his work. Let them call it cowardice. He had a crew to protect and cargo to deliver, and he would do it the human way. Carefully, methodically, and safely. Behind him, his crew began their own careful checks of the cargo, each one knowing that their so-called cowardice was the very thing that made humanity one of the most reliable and successful species in space transport. After all, a careful ship was a surviving ship, and humans were very, very good at surviving. The Prudence was 6 hours into its journey when the signal first appeared on their detection systems. Most ships would have missed it. Their basic sensors weren't designed to pick up such weak transmissions. But the Prudence, like all human vessels, carried 3 different types of emergency signal detectors. Captain Hayes called from his station, detecting a distress beacon, very faint, coming from Sector 87D. Miller looked up from his safety logs. 87D. That sector's supposed to be empty. He moved to Hayes' station, watching as the signal pulsed weakly on the screen. Bringing up the backup detectors now, Hayes said, fingers moving across his console, confirming signal on all 3 systems. Through the bridge windows, they could see other ships continuing their normal routes. None of them had noticed the signal, or if they had, they weren't responding. Multiple ships in range. Torres reported from engineering. Looks like a warrior-class cruiser from the militant faction, just passed within detection range. They're not stopping. Miller studied the signal patterns carefully. Any response on emergency channels? Negative, Walsh answered, already running through emergency protocols. I'm picking up some comm chatter, though. Other ships are calling it a ghost signal. Too risky to investigate. The bridge crew shared knowing looks. In their experience, too risky usually meant not properly prepared. Plot me a safe course, Miller ordered. Maximum distance from any gravity wells. I want triple redundancy on our navigation systems. As Hayes worked on the course, Miller opened the ship-wide comm. Attention all crew. We've detected a distress signal in Sector 87D. We are the only ship responding. Begin emergency preparation sequence Delta 7. Throughout the ship, crew members moved with practiced efficiency. Some aliens called their drills excessive, but every human knew proper preparation prevented death in space. Captain, a passing cargo ship hailed them. Our sensors show you're altering course toward the dead zone. Surely you humans aren't that stupid, even with all your safety measures. Miller responded professionally. Prudence acknowledges. We are responding to a distress signal. A distress signal. The alien captain laughed. That sector's been empty for centuries. Only you cowardly humans would pack enough extra fuel to chase ghost signals. The Prudence continued on its new course, its engines humming steadily. In engineering, Torres was already preparing their backup systems. All 3 power cores running at optimal levels, Captain. Emergency reserves at full capacity. As they approached the signal source, other ships began calling them. Each message carried the same theme. Only foolish, overcautious humans would waste time investigating such a dangerous area. Picking up some strange readings, Walsh reported after 2 hours of careful travel. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Bringing up visual, Hayes announced. The sight made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Floating in the emptiness of space was an enormous structure, clearly artificial, but ancient. Its design was unlike anything they'd seen before. Parts of it seemed to shimmer and fade, as if it wasn't fully in their reality. Temporal anomaly detected, Walsh said, his voice steady as he read multiple instrument panels. That's why no one comes here. The station appears to be partially phased out of normal spacetime. Miller studied the structure carefully. No wonder the other ships avoid this place. Without proper safety measures, getting too close could tear a ship apart. Good thing we're cowardly humans, Hayes said with a slight smile. We've got backup systems for our backup systems. The distress signal was stronger now, clearly coming from within the station. As they watched, part of the structure flickered, momentarily disappearing before reappearing. Running full structural analysis, Torres reported. 3 different scanning systems, all confirming the same thing. There's a stable zone we can dock in, but we'll need to be incredibly precise. Miller nodded. Begin docking preparations. Full safety protocols. I want every possible precaution taken. He looked at the ancient station through the view screen. Someone in there needs help, and we're the only ones equipped to give it. Because we're cowards? Walsh asked, already starting his pre-docking checks. Because we're human, Miller replied. And humans don't ignore calls for help. We just make sure we can actually provide it without dying in the process. The Prudence moved slowly toward the mysterious station, its cautious approach a stark contrast to the reckless speed of other species ships that were now fleeing the sector. Sometimes, Miller thought, it took more courage to move slowly than to rush in blindly. The docking procedure took 3 times longer than normal. Every step had to be perfect. The slightest mistake could tear the Prudence apart in the temporal anomaly's shifting gravity. Miller watched as his crew performed their tasks with careful precision. Docking clamps engage, Torres reported from engineering. All 3 sets holding steady. Atmospheric readings from the station, Miller asked. Walsh checked his instruments twice before answering. Breathable, but thin. Recommend full suits with backup oxygen supplies. He paused, looking at another reading. Sir, the temporal distortions are getting stronger. According to these readings, time itself is unstable inside the station. Of course it is, Hayes muttered. Just when you think space can't get any more dangerous. Miller gathered his boarding team. Hayes, Torres, and Walsh. Each of them checked and double-checked their environment suits, then checked each other's. Standard human procedure. As they prepared to enter the station, their ship's communication system crackled to life. Prudence, this is the Warrior-class vessel returning to your position, a familiar voice called. Our leaders decided we should monitor your foolish attempt at rescue. Through the Prudence's viewports, they could see the large alien ship hanging back at what they considered a safe distance. Miller knew they were really there to salvage anything valuable if the humans failed. Acknowledged, Miller responded simply. His team was ready. The airlock cycled, and they entered the ancient station. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that seemed to shift and waver before their eyes. Parts of the walls would become transparent for a moment, showing other versions of the same hallway layered on top of each other. This is why we wear safety lines, Walsh commented, checking the cables that connected them to each other and back to their ship. Standard human procedure that most species mocked. They followed the distress signal to what appeared to be the station's control center. The room was filled with ancient but still active technology. In the center, a holographic display showed something that made even the careful humans stop in their tracks. That's not possible, Torres whispered, checking her instruments. According to these readings, the temporal anomaly isn't just affecting the station. It's growing. Hayes moved to a console, his movements careful and measured. I'm accessing their databanks. The station's systems are failing, but their research is still here. He worked quietly for a moment. Captain, this is worse than we thought. The anomaly will reach major trade routes in less than a standard month. How many ships could be affected? Miller asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. All of them, Hayes replied. When this thing hits the trade routes, it'll tear apart every ship it touches. Millions could die. Just then, their suit radios crackled. Human vessel. The warrior ship called. Our sensors detect the anomaly is becoming unstable. You must abandon your rescue mission immediately. Miller looked at his team. Torres, can we stabilize the station? She was already running calculations on her suit's computer. Maybe. The station has systems designed to contain the anomaly, but they're failing. If we can repair them. She trailed off, checking more readings. But we have to go deeper into the temporal distortion field. No one's ever survived that. No one who wasn't human, Walsh corrected. No one with our safety protocols and backup systems. The warrior ship called again, their voice urgent now. Human vessel, you must retreat. Our sensors show the anomaly is reaching critical levels. Even your excessive safety measures cannot protect you now. Miller watched as parts of the room flickered in and out of existence. The temporal distortions were getting worse. Soon, they would tear the station apart, and then keep growing until they destroyed everything in their path. Options, he asked his crew. Hayes spoke first. The station's data shows experimental stabilization systems. They're damaged, but with our engineering knowledge. Torres nodded. We could repair them. It would be dangerous. We'd have to go through areas where time itself is breaking down. But our suits have temporal shielding. It's part of standard human safety protocols that everyone thinks is overkill. How long? Miller asked. An hour, maybe 2, Torres replied. But Captain, in the worst affected areas, time moves differently. For us, it could feel like days. Miller looked at his crew. They were scared. Only a fool wouldn't be. But they were also ready. This was why humans were so careful, so cautious, so cowardly. Because sometimes being careful was the only way to do the impossible. Begin repairs, he ordered. Walsh, set up emergency beacons. Hayes, download everything you can from their databanks. Torres, lead the way to those stabilization systems. He clicked his radio. Prudence, maintain position. If we're not back in 3 hours, initiate emergency protocols and warn every ship in the sector. The warrior ship made one last call. You humans are insane. Your cowardice has finally driven you to suicide. Miller switched off the external radio. They had work to do, and they would do it the human way. Carefully, methodically, and with every possible safety measure in place. Because sometimes the only way to be brave was to be cautious. Deep inside the ancient station, time wasn't moving right. Miller watched as Walsh raised his hand, and the motion left trails in the air, like multiple copies of the same movement happening at once. Their suit chronometers were showing different times. Some said they'd been here for minutes, others for hours. Status report, Miller called, checking that his safety line was still secure. Engineering systems located, Torres reported, her voice steady despite the strangeness around them. 3 separate control rooms, because of course there are 3. She managed a small smile. The aliens who built this place thought like humans. Hayes was studying his tablet, which was connected to the station's database. Captain, I think I know why this place was abandoned. The original crew didn't have enough safety measures in place. When the temporal anomaly first appeared, they had no backup systems, no emergency protocols. And now their mistake could destroy half the galaxy's trade routes, Walsh added, checking his 3rd set of sensors. The warrior ship's voice crackled through their radios again. Human vessel, the anomaly has grown 12% in the last hour. Your deaths will be meaningless. Miller switched to the private crew channel. Torres, talk to me about these control rooms. Torres pulled up a holographic display from her suit computer. 3 rooms, 3 different time streams. The temporal distortion is affecting each one differently. We'll need to synchronize them to stabilize the anomaly. The catch. Miller knew there was always a catch. We'll need teams in all 3 rooms, working in perfect sync. But time moves differently in each room. What feels like minutes in one might be hours in another. Hayes stepped forward. That's why other species can't do this. They don't have the equipment or the protocols to coordinate across different time streams. Miller looked at his crew. Standard human procedure was to never split up in dangerous situations. But standard human procedure also required them to use every available safety measure to complete the mission. Our suits have temporal shielding, Walsh said, already checking the equipment. Triple layered, because humans are paranoid about new technology. We also have synchronized quantum computers, backup communication systems, and emergency temporal beacons. All those excessive safety measures, Hayes added, and now They're exactly what we need. Miller nodded. Show me the plan. Torres projected a larger hologram, showing the 3 control rooms. Each room has a temporal core that needs to be stabilized. The trick is, they need to be adjusted in perfect sync, or the feedback loop could make the anomaly worse. How do we coordinate when time moves differently in each room? Miller asked. Walsh held up a small device, quantum entangled chronometers, standard equipment on human ships for the last decade. Other species called us crazy for installing them, said temporal synchronization was unnecessary. They're not calling us crazy now, Hayes noted. They're not here at all. Miller studied the map. The 3 control rooms formed a triangle around the main temporal core. Each one was affected differently by the anomaly. They would need perfect timing, perfect coordination, and perfect execution of their safety protocols. Teams of 2, he decided. No one works alone. Standard human procedure. Hayes and Walsh, you take control room 1. Torres, you're with me in control room 2. The Prudence's engineering team can handle control room 3 from our ship using the remote systems we've established. Remote systems that other species don't bother installing. Torres added with a hint of pride. They checked their equipment one final time. Each suit had 3 layers of temporal shielding. Each team member carried 3 different communication devices. Each safety line had 3 separate anchor points. Standard human procedure. Always have a backup for your backup. The warrior ship called one last time. Our sensors show you're moving deeper into the anomaly. You humans truly are insane. Miller looked at his crew as they prepared to split up. They were afraid. Of course they were afraid. But they were humans. Being afraid, being careful, being cowardly was what had kept their species alive in space. Remember your training, he told them. Follow every safety protocol. Check every reading twice. Move carefully, think clearly, and stay focused. He paused. And if anyone calls us cowards after this, we'll thank them for the compliment. The teams moved out, each heading to their assigned positions. Around them, time itself was breaking down, but they moved with careful, measured steps, checking their safety lines, monitoring their instruments, following every procedure that other species mocked. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was move too quickly, and sometimes the bravest thing you could do was to be careful. In Control Room 1, Hayes and Walsh watched time bend around them. Simple movements left ghost images in the air. Their chronometers showed they'd been working for 3 hours, but in Control Room 2, Miller and Torres had experienced only 30 minutes. Quantum sync check. Miller's voice came through their radios, sounding stretched and distorted. Control 1, sensed. Hayes responded, checking his 3rd backup communication device. The first 2 had already failed in the temporal distortion. Control 2, sensed. Torres replied. Control 3, sensed. Came the response from the Prudence's engineering team. Walsh studied their temporal core. The ancient machinery hummed with energy, parts of it flickering in and out of existence. Beginning stabilization sequence, he announced, his hands moving carefully over the controls. In Control Room 2, Miller and Torres worked with equal precision. The air around them seemed thick, like moving through water. Torres checked each reading 3 times before making any adjustments. First safety barrier failing, the Prudence reported. Activating backup shields. The station groaned around them. In Control Room 1, Hayes watched as a wall simply vanish, revealing the void of space. But their suits' multiple safety systems held. The emergency force field activated instantly, containing the breach. This is why we wear full suits for every operation, Walsh said, his voice steady. Standard human procedure. Control 2. Temporal pressure rising, Torres reported. Activating secondary containment field. The warrior ship, still watching from a safe distance, sent another message. Our sensors indicate the station's structure is breaking down. You humans and your safety measures will be torn apart. Miller ignored them, focusing on the careful sequence of adjustments needed to stabilize their temporal core. Everything had to be perfect. One mistake could collapse all 3 time streams into each other. Control 3 reporting critical fluctuations, the prudence called. Switching to backup power systems. In Control Room 1, Hayes finished his calculations. Beginning final sequence. All teams prepare for synchronization. Time moved strangely as they worked. In Control Room 2, Miller and Torres experienced each second as a minute. In Control Room 1, Hayes and Walsh saw time speed up, then slow down, then run backward. Only their quantum-sensed equipment kept them coordinated. Safety barrier 2 failing, the Prudence announced. Activating final backup. Parts of the station were literally disappearing around them. But they kept working, kept checking every reading, kept following every safety protocol. Their careful preparation was the only thing keeping them alive. Synchronization in 3. Hayes called. 2. 1. All 3 teams activated their temporal cores simultaneously. The station shuddered. Emergency alarms blared in 3 different time streams. Primary containment failing, Walsh reported. Secondary containment holding, Torres added. Tertiary systems engaged, the Prudence confirmed. The humans' triple redundant safety systems, so often mocked by other species, were the only thing preventing total collapse. Each backup system activated perfectly as the primary systems failed under the temporal stress. Temporal core stability at 30%, Hayes announced. 40%, Torres added. 50%, came the call from the Prudence. The warrior ship's sensors showed them what was happening. The massive temporal anomaly that had threatened to destroy the trade routes was being drawn back into the station. The humans' careful, methodical approach was working. Stability at 70%, Hayes reported. 80%, Torres confirmed. 90%, the Prudence called. Miller watched as the temporal distortions began to fade. The multiple time streams were merging back into one. Their quantum-sensed chronometers finally showed the same time. Temporal core stability achieved, Hayes announced. All safety systems holding. The station groaned one final time, then settled. The temporal anomaly was contained. The trade routes were safe. And it was all because of human cowardice, their backup systems, their safety protocols, their careful preparation. Status report, Miller called. Control Room 1 secure, Hayes responded. All safety systems functioning. Control Room 2 stable, Torres reported. Backup containment fields holding. Control Room 3 contained. The Prudence confirmed. Station structure stabilizing. The warrior ship's final message came through. Impossible. You survived. How could such a cowardly species? Miller finally responded to them. We survived because we're cowards, and we just saved your entire trade fleet because we're careful. You're welcome. Around them, the ancient station hummed with renewed purpose, its temporal cores safely contained by human safety protocols. Their excessive caution, their paranoid preparation, their cowardly approach had accomplished what no other species had even dared to attempt. With the temporal cores stabilized, Miller's team began their careful investigation of the station's records. The warrior ship had finally docked, their crew eager to see how the cowardly humans had succeeded where braver species had failed. You should see this, Captain, Hayes called from his position at the main computer terminal. He had spent the last hour carefully downloading and decoding the station's logs, using 3 different backup systems to ensure no data was lost. Miller floated over, followed by 2 of the warrior species commanders. The ancient screen flickered to life, showing records from the station's final days before abandonment. Playing log entry, Hayes announced, dated approximately 300 years ago. The screen showed an alien creature, its features similar to many of the brave warrior races that now dominated space travel. The alien looked desperate, its voice filled with regret. Final log entry, the alien spoke. Our experiments with temporal mechanics have failed catastrophically. We thought we were ready. We thought our courage would be enough. The alien laughed bitterly. Courage means nothing when reality itself breaks down. Torres, who was running her third diagnostic on the containment systems, looked up. They had no backup systems, she said quietly. No redundant safety protocols. The log continued. The temporal core breach began small. We thought we could control it through sheer will and bravery. We were wrong. Without proper containment systems, without emergency protocols, the alien seemed to struggle with the word. Without cowardly preparation, we were doomed from the start. The warrior commanders shifted uncomfortably as they watched. Miller kept his face neutral, but he could feel his crew's quiet pride. Second log entry. Hayes called up another recording. This one showed a different alien species, recorded perhaps 100 years later. Rescue attempt 47 has failed, the new alien reported. We thought our superior technology and courage would be enough to contain the temporal anomaly. We were wrong. The anomaly destroyed our primary systems, and we had no backups. No secondary containment. No emergency protocols. The alien's voice turned bitter. Perhaps we should have been more cautious. Walsh pulled up his own findings on a separate screen. I found records of over 200 rescue attempts, he reported. Every major species tried at least once. They all failed for the same reason. They weren't careful enough. They didn't have backup systems. They didn't follow safety protocols. They weren't cowards like us, Torres added with a slight smile. The warrior commanders watched as Hayes displayed more logs. Each one told the same story. Brave species rushing in to solve the problem, only to fail because they lacked proper preparation and safety measures. Final recording, Hayes announced, pulling up one last log. This one was dated just 50 years ago. The alien on screen looked defeated. We've analyzed all previous rescue attempts. We've come to a troubling conclusion. The alien seemed to struggle with its next words. The only species that might be able to stabilize this station is humanity. The warrior commanders turned to stare at Miller. He kept watching the screen. The humans, the alien continued, with their ridiculous safety protocols, their redundant systems, their endless preparation and careful procedures, everything we mock them for. These are exactly the qualities needed to survive temporal distortion. The log ended with a final, haunting message. If you're watching this, and you're not human, find them. Swallow your pride and ask the cowards for help. They're the only ones prepared for this. Silence filled the control room. Miller turned to his crew, who were already running their standard post-operation safety checks. 3 different diagnostic systems confirmed what they already knew. The station was secure, the temporal anomaly contained. Your preparation. One of the warrior commanders spoke carefully. It wasn't cowardice at all, was it? Miller checked his tablet, confirming all safety systems were still functioning. Depends on your definition of cowardice, he replied calmly. We believe that proper preparation prevents death. We believe that backup systems save lives. We believe that careful procedures matter. We believe, Torres added, that coming home alive is more important than looking brave. The warrior commanders looked around the station, at the human safety systems now integrated with the ancient technology, at the careful labels and warning signs the crew had already started posting, at the multiple backup generators humming quietly in the background. Perhaps, the second commander said slowly, the galaxy needs to redefine its understanding of courage. Miller nodded, then turned back to his crew. They had more safety checks to run, more systems to secure, more procedures to follow. Because that's what humans did. They were careful, they were cautious, they were prepared. They were proud to be cowards. 3 months after the temporal station incident, the Prudence docked at the same trading station where their adventure had begun. This time, something was different. The usual mockery was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. Docking port 17, this is Prudence requesting final safety check. Miller called out as usual. Acknowledged, Prudence, the dock controller replied, without a hint of laughter. Beginning triple check sequence as per new standard procedures. Miller shared a surprised look with Hayes. The controller was following human safety protocols. As they completed their careful docking procedure, Miller noticed other ships in the station were doing the same. Vessels of all species were performing multiple system checks, running backup protocols, following careful procedures that would have been mocked as cowardly just months ago. "Welcome to Trading Station Alpha," the dock controller announced as they finished their docking sequence. "Captain Miller, your presence is requested in the station's main conference room. They're waiting for your safety lecture." Torrid smiled at her console. Safety lecture. Us teaching other species about safety protocols. Now I've seen everything. The crew went through their standard suit checks before leaving their ship, but this time they weren't alone. Other crews were doing the same, some of them obviously new to the procedure, but all of them trying to follow the human way. In the conference room, Miller found representatives from 20 different species waiting for him. Among them sat the warrior commanders who had witnessed their success at the temporal station. Captain Miller, one of the station's administrators, stepped forward. After the temporal station incident, the Galactic Council has revised its standards for space safety. The administrator looked uncomfortable. "We find ourselves in need of human expertise." Miller nodded, keeping his face neutral. "How can we help?" "We need you to teach us," the warrior commander spoke up. "Teach us how to be careful." The word seemed to pain him slightly. "Teach us how to prepare properly." Hayes activated his tablet, bringing up the standard human safety protocols, hundreds of pages of careful procedures, backup systems, and emergency preparations. The other species didn't groan at the sight as they once would have. Instead, they leaned forward, eager to learn. "First lesson," Miller began, "is understanding why we have these protocols. Space is dangerous. Technology can fail. Things can go wrong. Being brave isn't enough. You have to be prepared." The next few hours passed as Miller and his crew explained their safety systems. They showed how to implement backup protocols, how to properly check equipment, how to prepare for emergencies before they happened. The other species took notes, asked questions, and slowly began to understand. "This is why you survived the temporal station," one alien observed. "All these preparations, all these backup systems, they weren't cowardice at all. They were wisdom," another added. Miller watched as his crew demonstrated proper safety procedures to the gathered aliens. Warriors who once mocked human caution now carefully checked their equipment 3 times. Species that had prided themselves on their bravery now insisted on multiple backup systems. "The galaxy is changing," Hayes observed quietly to Miller. "All because we were too cowardly to ignore a distress signal." A month later, the Prudence was back in space, carrying cargo as usual. But things were different now. Other ships hailed them not with mockery, but with requests for safety advice. Space stations had started implementing human-style safety protocols. The word cowardly had become a compliment in space travel circles. "Prudence, this is Cargo Vessel 7. A call came in. Could you verify our safety checklist? We want to make sure we're being properly careful." Miller smiled as he helped the other ship through their checks. The galaxy had finally learned what humans had known all along, that true courage wasn't about rushing in blindly, but about being prepared for anything. "Remember," he told the other ship's captain, "triple check everything. Have backups for your backups. Follow every safety protocol. Be cowardly," the other captain asked, using the word with new respect. "Be human," Miller corrected. "Be careful, be prepared, and most importantly, be alive." Around them, the stars shone, as they always had. But the ships that moved between them were different now. More careful, more prepared, more cautious, more human.